Welcome to the Mindful CIO podcast. This season, we focus on building trust, culture, and capability for responsible AI adoption. Together, we will explore what it takes for CIOs and technology leaders to implement AI in a way that balances speed with governance, innovation with accountability, and performance with long-term value. If you are navigating the complexity of AI inside your organization, you are in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the Mindful CIO podcast, building trust, culture, and capability for responsible AI adoption. So today we are honored to speak with Greg Taylor. Greg Taylor has made it his mission to help people adopt change with confidence. After spending 18 years in the Royal Australian Air Force flying C-130 Hercules aircraft, he decided to take his leadership and experience into the corporate world. Since then, he has worked with change leaders in a wide range of industries, helping them adapt and transform their organizations. In his role in Salesforce, he leads a team of change experts across APAC, working with customers to help them build change, the change muscle, so they can realize their goals, and is particularly active in the AI space. So, warm welcome, Greg. Lovely to have you in the
Thanks,
podcast
Nat.
today.
It's great to be here.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's kick off, Greg. Now, that bio tells a little bit, but there's so much more to Greg Taylor. So let's start with a little bit of your career journey, briefly, and how did you arrive today to be, working at Salesforce and very, very active in the AI space?
Yeah, thanks, Nat. And as you kind of introduced me, so I started out my career as an Air Force pilot, straight out of high school, and spent 18 years traveling the world, doing all kinds of amazing things, and was promoted to a level where I wasn't necessarily going to be flying as much anymore. And so it was kind of a fork in the road. Do I stay in the Air Force or do I try something else? And at the time, I had been leading a culture change program in the Air Force alongside Sir Angus Houston, who was then the Chief of Air Force. And it kind of utilized the type of skills that I thought might be relevant in many different organizations. And so I took the leap outside the Air Force and became a consultant in the change space, and slowly worked my way through all kinds of different scenarios, working as a consultant, working inside organizations, helping with a whole range of transformation initiatives, working on knowledge management projects, working on organization redesign projects, working on technology projects, and working across many different industries as well. And 4 years ago, had the opportunity to join Salesforce and build their human-centered change practice in the APAC region. So they didn't really have a change practice at the time in professional services. So I set about building that, and now look after that. And as you said, the space is changing dramatically. We're now very active, looking at how we help organizations grapple with the challenges of AI and transform or evolve their organizations to take into account what it takes to be AI enabled. So that's what I'm doing now, and I love it.
Thanks, Greg. And it's fascinating the change, the career change that you made. And yes, I'm actually surprised because I didn't know about this background in aviation of yours. Because for full disclosure here, and for those listening or watching, we have actually connected, myself and Greg, over a decade ago when we worked together. Greg was actually my mentor for a little while at UGL. I hope it's okay to mention their name, but to name them. But yes, and I always remember you very fondly, Greg. This very approachable, friendly executive. That was my mentor for a while back in the days. Yeah.
Oh, very nice. And you're a wonderful mentee. Yes, and look at you now. Yeah.
Thank you. So, of course, at with your role at Salesforce,
Yeah.
AI is a very hot topic, as it is
Mm,
pretty much everywhere nowadays. So, it'd be good to hear from you, Greg. Firstly, from your personal experience. I've seen you,
mm,
been following you, connected with you on LinkedIn since then, and I've been seeing you, running think tanks around AI and many events. So, it would be good to hear from you your individual personal experience with AI first. What do you use
mm,
AI for? What are the tools that are your favorites? What have you been playing with
mm.
recently?
Yeah, definitely. And I think look, we're we're in quite a privileged position in Salesforce. So Salesforce invests a lot of time and expectation that we will be very familiar with all kinds of different aspects of AI, not just AI in the Salesforce platform. So we get access to lots of education, but also in the work that we do get access to lots of authorized tools. And we are also very much educated on what kind of information we can share with those tools. So I'm pretty much using Gemini Suite every day in my work, as well as tools that are embedded within some of the processes that we have inside Slack and inside Salesforce. But Gemini is a tool that it becomes a bit of a lifeline for all kinds of things, right from research to ideation to synthesis to creation of content, images, infographics, videos, voiceovers for videos, all kinds of stuff that we're doing in our change work. And you mentioned that the other kind of workshops and events that I'm involved with for the last 12 to 18 months. I've been quite active in the change management community here, mainly in Sydney, but Sydney and Melbourne, and bringing some of the things that I've learned about how you can make use of tools safely, responsibly, and with great levels of productivity, taking that to the change community. And so some of the boot camps that we run with change professionals are about showing them what they can do in their own work, but also helping educate them about the black box that is AI. How do we unpack that? How do we come to understand how it all works so that we can be much more deliberate and intentional when we interact with the AI that's available to us and much more aware of how to interact.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for sharing, Greg. And that you touched on tools, and thanks for already going around the topic of responsible AI adoption. We'll get there in more detail. But when we had the preparation for today, we spoke about tools versus
Mm,
capability, right?
mm,
So moving towards the organizational side of things, and you have, played extensively in that space of organizational development as well. When we talk about the landscape, dealing with your customers, clients from Salesforce, and colleagues, people in general that are
mm,
speaking with you with your events, what are you seeing the AI landscape,
mm.
especially around levels of maturity in your organizations? What's your take, Greg, at the moment?
Yeah, yeah. It's I I think in the work that we do and the people that I speak to, I feel like there's a lot of overwhelm that
Mm,
people are encountering. There's an awful lot of information available. There's an awful lot of different kinds of tools, and they evolve very quickly as well. So new features, new functions, multimodal, all of these kind of convergence in some of the AI tools, agentic kinds of capabilities coming through. So I feel like people are quite overwhelmed. So when we look at a maturity curve, it's really hard to plot maturity, I think, when the capability itself is evolving so rapidly.
mm,
Um, but what's becoming very clear, I think, is that the gap is widening between those people and those organizations that are on a path to understand and make use of the capability, not so much the tools, um, and those that are stuck for any number of reasons. And I think that's what's really a measure. It's not, to me, it's not so much of, okay, we're at a starting place and we're going to reach a level of high maturity and it feels like a destination.
mm,
I kind of feel it with AI. It's almost like we don't even know where the destination might be.
mm.
And we know the path is moving so quickly, but we want to be intentional and deliberate in how we might engage on that journey. So there are definitely stepping stones to be more AI enabled, but it's kind of hard to think of it like a maturity because a maturity implies that there's a top corner that you'll reach.
Mm.
I haven't seen anybody reach it yet. What is this top corner?
A
Uh,
well-known goal but that we actually
yeah.
don't have because it's being developed as we speak. So many things you mentioned that I'd like to touch on. So one is yes, I was talking to someone today actually, about the fact that having favorite tools actually has changed so quickly
Mm,
because once you have new models and but then you
yes.
have context in a particular model, so you go like, oh, it's like this model knows me so well, and then to
Mm,
migrate to another model, there's a cost to that. Um,
definitely.
and in terms of maturity, often I attended a webinar this week and they were talking about, the good old role modeling from the leadership,
Mm,
leadership role modeling often tends to influence positively, other layers of the organization.
mm,
So that's one. And your point around the gap in between those who are experimenting, regardless of if they know actually where they're heading to,
mm,
just the fact that organizations who are experimenting or are on the path versus those who are not. Um, yeah, interesting. Which direction would you like to go, Greg?
Well, I'm just kind of piggybacking off that. I kind of
Mm,
feel like instead of a maturity, there's almost like a measure of fluency and
mm,
confidence in an organization. And we talk a little bit about AI fluency, but I kind of feel like it's data and AI fluency become important
mm,
indicators because, as we know, when you start to think about agentic AI, there's an element of understanding information that sits underneath and feeds and supports agent and human interactions that is about data and knowledge. And so I kind of feel like there's this um, almost like a journey of fluency that you can map, whether someone is just starting on their journey or whether they actually have deep experience and expertise, experimentation, some of the attributes of a maturing organization that are more around the characteristics that support ongoing fluency and ongoing uh, evolution. So to me, this is less of a transformation problem and more of an evolution and confidence
mm,
problem. And that's kind of how we like to talk about it with those organizations that we're working with. Because the transformation, it feels like a project and it feels like the focus is on the system.
mm,
Whereas in evolution, it kind of feels like you'll be constantly adapting. And that's where we are right now. We are still rigorously adapting to what we're seeing emerge. So I guess it's just a mindset difference. Yeah.
mm. Thank you. Yeah, agree. And what's coming to mind? Someone that I spoke in a previous episode, and they are a big champion of organizations experimenting, not being so hung up by the return on investment, on the value delivered.
Mm,
And I think back to your point, that's building that muscle, that fluency. So organizations that are doing that are probably more well prepared.
yes.
But there is a cost to that. So sometimes
Yep.
it can be hard to justify. I don't know if that's something that you were seeing. Perhaps no leadership saying, well, we need to deliver value, but there is value in experimenting, building the capability through that experimentation. Hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's why I think there's the important shift from seeing AI as a tool or a system to implement and seeing it as an organizational capability, particularly when we talk about agentic AI. I think one of the biggest things that we're seeing is that we're immersed in AI every day at Salesforce where I work. We're kind of surrounded by it, so we're constantly thinking about it. Organizations that we work with, not necessarily. It's an important element, but it's not consuming all of their thinking every day, right? And what we're finding is that when you talk about AI, most people are still anchored in generative AI
Hmm.
as the thing we're talking about. And if you think about generative AI, it's more about individual productivity than organizational value. And certainly the research would indicate that there isn't a lot. we're not seeing organizations able to reap a lot of the productivity benefits that are coming from generative AI. What seems to be happening is that most people, if they are more individually productive, they're banking that individual productivity somewhere. And we're not quite sure where it might be. You know, what it's like, you go down the AI hole and you say, oh, well, this is great. I'm so much more productive on this particular task. Imagine what else I could be doing. And you start experimenting with things, right? And that sucks up the time, but that's a good investment in some ways. But so I feel this anchoring on generative AI is driving a productivity lens, but the individuals are banking the productivity. Now, there was a fascinating piece of research that came out, was published, I think, in February, the National Bureau of Economic Research, I think. Anyway, this was the interview of 6,000 executives across UK, US, Australia, and Germany. The Australian research was conducted by Macquarie University in this collaborative study. So the essence of this research paper, they asked the executives whether they had seen any measurable impact to productivity and employment over the last 3 years directly attributed to AI. And 90% of them said zero impact, up or down. 6,000 executives, right? Zero impact over the last 3 years attributed to AI. But they were asked the question, over the next 2 years, what do you anticipate in terms of productivity and workforce and employment? And collectively, these 6,000 executives expected that there would be a 1.75 million headcount shift as a result of AI over the next 2 years. Now, not seeing any evidence, but expectation is that the value AI will bring is headcount reduction. There's something that's not quite right. There's this dissonance in what is the value that AI can bring. Yes, we'd like to measure things in financial terms, and there's an important element to that. But I think we're yet to really unpack what are the various elements of value that AI can bring to an organization. Is it just time and headcount, or is there something else, particularly around customer and employee experience, that we really need to dig into? And where do we reinvest the cognitive capacity that we free up if we're redirecting non-value adding tasks? How do we become more human in the services we deliver? So I think there's a lot in that in itself.
Which is the entire promise of technology in the first place, right?
Well, you think so? Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yes, you touched on AI fluency and types of AI, and how most people, when they're talking about AI, they're talking about Gen AI because it's the type of AI become mainstream, thanks to ChatGPT, etc. And of course, we have, as you know well, Greg, we had no machine learning, no the old type of AI been around for a long time. And we have upcoming agentic, or it's already here, right? But I think it's quite newish, agentic AI. I'm inclined maybe to go there into, what's your view in terms, we spoke about, workflow and managing blended workforce and all of that discussion. But I wonder if we should go to responsible AI first. And when I talk about responsible AI, I think more recently I have refined, the different layers of responsible AI. So we have a responsible AI being, everyone's business. No, not just our developer, solution architects, AI engineers who are developing, designing AI solutions, as well as the people using, consuming AI, as well as leaders assigning ownership and governments, and policy procedures around governance as well. So I think there are so many players around involved to make sure that AI is adopted in a responsible manner. So yeah, just responsible AI in general. How would you define, or what comes to mind for you when you think of responsible AI? What does that mean for you?
Yeah. I think there's many layers. You can look at responsible AI from a governance perspective, and that can be linked to the things that organizations have an obligation to protect. So we need to make sure that information is managed in a secure way. We need to make sure that regulatory and compliance obligations are realized. We need to make sure that we deal with ethics. That we ethically and responsibly deploying technology. We're doing this in an environmentally sustainable way, and that we're also engaging our workforce in a meaningful conversation around how we evolve the organization. So you can look at that in a responsible level in a governance capacity, right? At an organizational governance capacity. I think there's another layer to it, and that is because we have a high level of social awareness around AI tools because of their availability in our private lives. I think when we talk about responsible use of AI, there's an employee or a workforce perspective on what that means and what the expectation might be. And to me, what underpins all of that is trust. So when we talk about responsible use of AI in the workforce context, I feel like it's how do we help our workforce trust the way in which we intend to use these capabilities? How do we help our organization use these capabilities in a way that helps our customers trust the work we do? And that's kind of like at a meta level rather than some of those more reportable, compliance-oriented obligations. It's much more of a relationship. How do we build this layer of trust to show that we are exploring these capabilities in a responsible way, responsible to the people who work with us and the people that we serve through our services or products. So I kind of feel to me, that's what responsible use of AI is. It's a leadership level as well as a governance level. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, 100%. And listening to you, what came up for me was this statement that I saw in a slide this week in a webinar I attended, the same webinar I mentioned before, that nobody would adopt AI tool if they believe that would take their job, right? So I think that's, of course, which could lead us to talk about blended workforce and agentic AI and concerns around that. But trust, again, from the employee level. Yeah, there are many layers, I think, in that dimension as well that we could go into.
Yeah, it is. And FOBO, we'll call it FOBO, fear of being obsolete, it's such a real thing. And it's really interesting. If you look at some of the research, what it points to is that the more educated your workforce is around AI capabilities, the more likely it is that they will be concerned about their employment. So they may incorporate AI more willingly and have a lot more confidence in engaging with the AI, but also the data would point to the fact that they also would be more likely to be concerned about their future with AI.
Really? I thought it was actually the opposite because I'm really curious because I think at this stage, as we know, AI is great for many things, but still behind.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I still, struggling with PowerPoints, out of, I'm still a lot of manual intervention when I'm doing my slides.
Yeah.
Small things like that. But yeah, I'm assuming that you have some research, Greg, because you are
This
very
was,
well researched.
Well, it's from the Reserve Bank. Reserve Bank. It was published in November 2025. It's actually looking at global perceptions of job impacts versus adoption. And those countries that were much higher on the adoption curve also had the highest levels of concern about jobs. Yeah, that's where that piece came from. And it kind of makes sense in a way because there is if it's not just a black box anymore, there are so many variables to unpack. And of course, because things are evolving so quickly and we don't see a lot of evidence of some of these capabilities being employed in organizations, so we don't have a lot of patterns to go on. And so because of the uncertainty, I think that's what breeds a level of anxiety or concern rather than, oh, I'm going to lose my job. It's more like, wow, I have no idea what my job is going to look like in the future if all of these things are happening. And also, I'm more educated in AI. I also appreciate that it takes a lot to keep up. And so, I feel kind of tired about all of this thing that's coming down. So I kind of feel that that's where it is. It's not so much. Yeah, it is a bit of a paradox.
Because
Yeah.
yeah, enabling employees, but knowing that that would increase the likelihood of their being concerned and not so
Yeah,
productive and present, because of those distractions. Hmm.
maybe. Yeah, yeah.
So, if we move on to talk about, yeah, responsible adoption, and you touched on governance and speed. So
Mm.
back to not FOBO, but I learned something today with you, Greg. FOBO, I haven't heard of FOBO before, but if we look at FOMO, the fear of
Mm.
missing out versus
Mm.
responsible adoption. So I think
Mm.
many
Mm.
organizations are having this tug of war between
Yeah.
we want to do the right way, comply with regulations, etc. But if our competitors, is that a competitive advantage we're
Mm.
running behind if we're not doing fast enough?
Yeah.
What are you seeing, or any
Yeah.
thoughts around, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So we're seeing a bit of a sandwich effect. So what we're seeing, particularly when we talk to leaders, there is a lot of pressure from boards and senior executives to do something meaningful and impactful with AI, because that's the FOMO. Everyone else is doing it. Well, why are we not doing it? So
Mm,
let's
mm,
let's do something. Because of the social or the general population access to AI, there's pressure from the bottom up to, well, I can do this kind of stuff in my personal life. How come I don't have the same access or can't do the same things in my work life?
mm.
And we certainly know from all kinds of research or evidence that um, a, a significant portion of any workforce will be using AI, whether their organization condones it or not.
Shadow.
And
Mm,
shadow AI is a big
mm.
thing. Yep, that's right. And so there's this pressure, right? The pressure from the workforce to do something, given how quickly the capabilities are moving, and pressure from above to really show some value and impact. And that's kind of creating the squeeze in the middle. But you're right, the squeeze in the middle, those people are accountable for making sure that whatever is done in a way that protects information, privacy, is ethical, is responsible. They're kind of squished. So how do we do this quickly, but in a safe and responsible way is the challenge. And certainly we're encouraging this idea of freedom in a frame where there is an understanding or a stimulation of an experimentation and an entrepreneurial kind of mindset in, if not all, then parts of an organization where value could potentially be realized, but in a way that enables the organization to contain the lessons learned. So I think that's what's important. This is not about a pilot. This is actually more about how do we really understand and experiment with the capability, but in a way that minimizes the risk or disruption to our business. If we're not ready to take a slice of our business and start to implement or to use the capability, how do we experiment in a safe way, so that we can learn as much as possible as quickly as possible?
Love it. And I love the freedom in a frame. Have you coined that, Greg?
No, I think it's a comment. It's a bit like shadow
Okay.
AI. All these
Okay.
terms are popping up, right? But yeah, freedom in a frame is the idea of
Mhm.
experimentation with guardrails,
Mhm.
but in a way that doesn't necessarily create risk for
Mhm.
other, what's outside that
So
frame.
it's
Yeah,
the safe playground. That's what I heard
yeah,
before.
yeah.
Hmm. Cool. And I don't want to go back to tools, but because you mentioned that the pressure, the sandwich effect, the
Mm.
pressure from the bottom and the boards and people in the middle, trying to do the best to deliver within those constraints and pressures. Yes, so many organizations, as you know, they are sticking to the well-known, safe or trusted big brands
Hmm.
and not necessarily those are the favorites, the preferred tools from workforce. So we have shadow AI. Anything that you've seen that works, have been working in that managing that tension, or how organizations are dealing with that. Any thought around that
I think,
conflict?
yeah, yeah. Look, and it varies depending on the industry. So we know that some organizations have very tight constraints be that government, health. There's places where there are quite natural constraints that do limit their ability to kind of experiment and test, right? So we're very conscious of that. But I think that doesn't stop any organization for actually educating their workforce about the capability as a whole. You may not be able to implement various AI tools and start to build out your capability, but you can certainly educate your organization as to what these things look like. And importantly, if they are bringing AI to work, you really do need that level of education so that if you can't control it, it can at least be well informed about whatever it is that's happening. We can't rely on the fact that people who have adopted ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, we can't rely on the fact that, oh, of course they'll be educated about how they should understand where the data is going and what it's contributing to. We can't rely on that. They may or may not know. So I think it's up to an organization to at least have a good education program around AI, even if they can't exercise that using some of the AI tools in the organization. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Good. So, if we move to talk about culture, and we spoke about communities of practice, and building capabilities, all connected, right? Behaviors, desired behaviors, undesired behaviors, mindset around what's responsible AI adoption, etc. What have you seen working well in terms of building that culture that can help safe and effective AI adoption, Greg? What have you seen in practice
Yeah, I
that
think
you're able to share?
yeah, definitely. Well, it's a you mentioned it before around leadership role modeling. I think that's a very important element. We talk to many leaders, and sometimes I get the impression they think it's a young person's game, AI, and I think that's a danger. Leaders should be very well informed about the AI as a capability and where they should be investing their attention, and and those leaders that are able to exercise and show how they're using AI themselves are going to get much better results from their organization in terms of safe, responsible adoption. It'll also be naturally part of the conversation. They'll be stimulating the conversation as a result, right? But what we also find, one of the most effective measures is peer-to-peer learning. And so we experience this ourselves in Salesforce. We've got all kinds of different interventions that are run to build and continue to build AI fluency. Some of them are formal education. Some of them are, enablement activities, guides, dashboards that show people what people are using and what they're not using. The most effective is the peer-to-peer learning, where a peer will demonstrate how they've gained some benefit in the work that they're doing. So these use cases, very practical application examples that are shared within a team that the rest of the team can then springboard off. We find that that's actually one of the most effective. And so encouraging that and stimulating that becomes an important part of the culture. How do we create space for people to share their experience openly so that it doesn't have, it's not a secret, it's not hidden away. We don't want shadow AI to be literally everything we do is kind of tucked away, and we don't want anyone to know we're using AI, because that's a bad thing. Actually, it's a good thing if we're trying to stimulate this culture. And so creating spaces for peer-to-peer learning is a really important way to shape AI adoption and the culture of the organization.
Fantastic. Yeah, and what I heard from previous guest speakers in the podcast was the idea of prompt libraries and getting leaders to share once a week or whatever frequency. Of course, in smaller firms, maybe that's feasible, to share what they are using AI for, and share, this is the prompt that I used this week, and
Yep.
that's what was the purpose. So help to demystify as well. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, you touched on use cases, Greg, and I'm thinking now moving to change because now when I met you, you were the expert, in change back in the days. This is over a decade ago, so you're now like next, next level. But when we talk about change, and I think the change community have experienced. Lots of transformation when we move to traditional waterfall to, especially in the tech space, to agile delivery, but now this is old news now. And now we have AI and agentic AI coming in here. So, what are your thoughts around? Does that change anything for change management, or we still can adopt the test and proved approach and mindset before?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think if we just look at change itself and the management of change, so a change practitioner and the kind of work or the jobs to be done for a change practitioner, I think what's shifting is that, and certainly we get this from talking to executives, and we've kind of evolved our own practices based on what we've been hearing from our customers. The pace of change. So organizations are experiencing an incredible number of initiatives. So the volume of change has increased dramatically, and Gartner research will kind of point to this compared to, say, 10 years ago. So the volume of change activities and therefore the willingness or the energy of people to be able to engage in those activities is diminishing. Now, you might call this change fatigue or change resistance or whatever. The fact of the matter is if there's a lot more change going on and it's much more frequent, I've got less energy to invest because I have to spread my energy across these different things. And also I feel like, gosh, I'll do this one thing, but then there's another thing behind it and another and another. And it becomes a little bit overwhelming at times. That's what we're hearing is the experience. And so what it means is change managers have to rethink and reimagine how they support their business stakeholders through these types of experiences and transitions, because we need to find a way to make change feel more like business as usual than an add-on to an already busy schedule. And unfortunately, I think we're dealing with a psychological contract that when people join an organization, you're given a job description, and usually that job description is way out of date because the manager who's hiring hasn't got time to go and update it. But that's another story,
There's
right?
too much change going on.
It's too much change, yeah. So they just rip it out of the bottom drawer, whatever we did last time. But that describes a steady state job. Very few job descriptions will actually say, oh, by the way, 20% of your time is going to be just managing the transition from one old thing to a new thing, right? So we have this psychological contract when we join an organization that we will have a steady job, occasionally disrupted by change. And that's not what people are
Sure,
experiencing
well.
today. Yeah, they're not experiencing that. And so the call out to change managers, I think, is how do we reimagine how we deliver change experiences and support the building of muscle within various levels of an organization to be able to lead and manage change so that it is absorbed more like business as usual than the great big change bus driving into town with every initiative with bells and whistles and their own logo and a banner and a song and, trying to get the attention because there's so much going on. So that to me is what it's not just about AI, although AI further complicates and accelerates this need. I think this is more what we're seeing generally, that our methods have to evolve as the experiences of change are also evolving.
Mm. It's refreshing. In a meta level, now if we bring to practical tips around how doing that,
Yeah, yeah.
we can talk to you offline, of course. But what yeah, if you had to leave one or two tips for those listening, what would that be, Greg?
So the tips for that are always to start. So this is how we've reimagined this. start with the outcome. What is the outcome that we're trying to generate as a result of this? So what are the behaviors, mindsets? What are the outcomes? And then work backwards from that to say, well, how do we create an experience to transition people effectively? A lot of change management practices are process driven. We start with a stakeholder analysis, and then we do a very detailed Excel spreadsheet we call a change impact assessment. And then we do this, and then we do that. Very process driven. The tip really is to say, imagine if we turn that on its head. Let's start with the outcome. What's the outcome we're trying to drive? Who are the persona groups that are impacted? So what groups of people are served by this shift? And given the context of each of these persona groups, what experience do we need to engineer in order to transition them as effectively as possible? So it's almost like working backwards from the outcome. So that would be the tip. And that's more of a mindset than a complete change in method. You might use the similar methods eventually to engineer that experience, but the way in which you would approach the problem to be solved is from the outcome rather than the process. Yep.
Love that. Thank you. Wow, so much wisdom. So how we track with time? Greg, if we switch gears to talk about agentic AI and impact to workforce, again, with your experience in OD and change, and governance as well, when we talk about agentic AI for personal use versus team and organization wide, the potential legacy, if it's not governed well,
Yep.
if I have an agent in my team and then I, retire that agent, is that being used by your team? We don't know if it's not mapped, et cetera, et cetera. Let alone, many other aspects around it. So, also capability from leaders to manage the blended workforce. So what are you seeing in terms of agentic AI at this stage? What are your thoughts? Anything that I haven't touched on that you'd like to comment on, please?
Yeah, look, I think we're still very much in the emerging or stages of understanding the true organizational impact. So we have hypotheses and we have theories and we have strategies to help, organizations that are on this path, but we haven't really seen the scale of application that gives us reliable data as to what works and what doesn't, right? So let's say that. But what we do know is that because agentic AI is somewhat non-deterministic, so we can't always predict exactly what outcome we're going to get every single time. And the very nature of an agentic process is that it should learn and iterate based on the outcomes of the previous iteration, right? We need to treat it much more like we would treat a very fast learning human or team of humans and integrate it into our workflow and into our organization in exactly the same way we think about the unpredictable or non-deterministic nature of our human workforce, right? The great thing about agentic AI is that to use it well, you do need to define a very specific role and guardrails and actions for an agent. So the jobs to be done for an agent should be very well defined. How it goes about that job and what is the level of quality and effectiveness over time is really what you're monitoring or supervising. But we have to help managers better understand what does it mean to run a team when I've got humans and agents working side by side in a workflow. And the agent is not so much a technology tool as it is a digital worker. So I think we don't know enough about what that looks and feels like yet. We understand the technology and we have a hypothesis about how to incorporate this effectively into the fabric of an organization, but we haven't seen enough of it yet to know what are the skills that we have to help leaders and managers with, and even individual contributors who now become supervisors. working alongside an agent. Every individual contributor now has an assistant or is augmented in some way with digital agents. So these are the skills I think that we're still learning. And then how we build those skills in our human workforce is obviously going to be very important.
Yes, thank you, Greg. And you mentioned supervision now, and before you mentioned, well, humans in the loop came to my mind, something that you mentioned before, and and change fatigue. I think that was the point that came up, and I think what we are hearing a lot is that many roles, would tend to evolve from, being the doer or, the manager to the supervisor of, agents. And I think humans in the loop comes to my mind. And as you know, humans in the loop has been superseded. We're talking about humans above the loop, and humans in command and
Yeah.
etc. Because with agentic AI, my impression is that, humans becoming a bottleneck, very, very easily because of the demand, the output from agents. And then when you see, when you look into the demand generated to humans to supervise, revise, check, and being the owners to endorse or not. So anything in mind comes to you in terms of the humans in the loop, humans becoming a bottleneck, and that ownership, the fact that agents ideally, should have owners, because I'm sure you heard about the, Air Canada,
Yep.
case, and many others
Yep.
where we need to have that ownership very clear,
Yeah,
around.
that's right. And I
Yeah.
think one of the things that many customers or many organizations that we work with, when they start out, they look at an existing human workflow and they look where they could automate or agentify the workflow, but they're looking at it of replacing a human with the agent. But normally, the workflow that exists is built around human constraints because humans were performing the work. So the levels of approval, the levels of review, the decision steps, all these kind of bits and pieces exist because of the human nature of the workflow. After organizations have piloted and experimented with and better understood the capability, we're certainly saying that you need to reimagine the work to be done so that it delivers the right experience for the human that is left in the workflow and for the consumer of the output of the workflow. So customer and employee experience. If you do that, then you don't end up with a human being the bottleneck, because what you do is you reimagine the work. And what you do when you look at the work to be done, you say, which bits of this work must be human, because that's where the value in this process comes from. That very element of value comes because it is human. How do we then look at the other elements around that, the elements of friction in particular, and use AI or agents to support that, to allow the humans to deliver much deeper and more value in the
Mm.
spaces where human value exists? I think if we take that approach, that's how we redesign the work to be done so that the humans are actually not a bottleneck in a decision process. The humans are actually adding the value, because every process, every customer-driven process is going to have a touch point where the human element becomes the value in that part of the process.
Okay. Wow. Light bulb moment for Natalie. Thank you, Greg. I heard that, many times we don't want to replace, and it's not pure automation, it's the smart automation when we identify.
Mm,
So we really need to redesign. Do we even need to do this particular task? Do we need to have this process actually in the first place? Do we need to
mm,
actually to override and actually redesign the whole thing? But what I had in mind was that we still will need a human to look at the end to end, but maybe not. Maybe, as you said, yes, if we're really, really, really reimagining, maybe that's.
that's why it's important to say, well, if you had more human resources, you had more cognitive capacity, where would you deploy that to be able to get more value from the resources that are put in? Right? If we're constrained, if you had more human capacity, where would you deploy it? Right? I think that opens up the value question. This is where we're talking before about, stuck on time saving and headcount reduction. Let's flip this around. Every organization is constrained. Every organization wants to grow in some way or to deliver better experience for customers or to be able to absorb more demand without having to apply the same X number of growth in number of humans that work there, right? So there's always if you work on the theory of constraints there's a constraint. If you had more human capacity, where would you deploy it? That should be then the focus of, okay, how do we therefore remove the friction in these other places, potentially using AI, and then redefine the work to be done for the humans, doing the work they probably actually find more valuable anyway, right? And certainly those people who are then the recipients of that service are going to find it it's more valuable as well. So I think that's where we need to take the conversation particularly when we talk about agentic, because agentic AI creates a lot of fear and worry for people, and therefore to deliberately have this conversation with purpose, we're really trying to reimagine what we might do if we had more human and cognitive capacity.
Wonderful. Greg, such a pleasure to reconnect. And I feel that was a very indulgent, conversation, nearly 1 hour one-on-one with you. So I feel very privileged. Before we wrap up, it would be good to hear, before I get to the final question, which is, what are your final, we covered a lot of ground, but it would be good to hear from you. What are your final tips around for the listeners, how leaders out there can build trust, capability, and culture for responsible AI adoption? If you have any final golden nuggets. But before that, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to share how, if people would like to connect with you, what's the best way via LinkedIn, and maybe if you want to share a little bit of what's happening at Salesforce, what are you being up to, maybe upcoming events, anything that you'd like to share.
Sure, yeah, certainly people can connect with me on LinkedIn. Greg Scoop Taylor, I think you probably put some of the details with the podcast. But yeah, certainly reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way. The work that we do at Salesforce is constantly evolving. But running the change practice, we are frequently involved in conversations, either advising our customers about where they could be what they could be thinking about, or actually rolling up our sleeves and actually helping them deliver. So and most of our Salesforce customers know how to reach out through their account execs to get access to our services. So best place would be certainly LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Thanks, Greg. So if you have anything, because we actually exhausted on so many topics and so many tangents, but if you have any final thoughts, pearls of wisdom to share with the listeners around responsible AI adoption or building culture, capability, and trust for that, please share away.
I think the number one takeaway, and this is what I love about the work that I get to do. Every day I'm dealing with people who know there's something they don't know, but they don't exactly know what that is. I think the mindset starts with being curious. If you want to lead an AI-enabled organization, you want to promote curiosity. Freedom within a frame is a very important principle, so make sure you've got the guardrails to encourage people to be curious, but allow people to be curious and open about their level of curiosity, because that's where the capability will emerge, and people will start to learn how to be responsible and how to bring new life into the organization.
Wonderful. Wise words, Greg. So let's end right there with those wise words. So thanks again for your time, for your energy,
Thank you,
for
Nat.
sharing your wisdom. Wish you all the best with your upcoming trip. Enjoy the
Thank
old
you.
continent
Yes.
and look forward to reconnect sometime soon.
Thanks, Nat. It was great to talk with you, and yeah, good to connect again.
Thanks for tuning in. If you're finding value in these conversations on responsible AI leadership, please subscribe and share the podcast with fellow CIOs and technology leaders. Together, we can shape what responsible AI adoption looks like in practice. See you in the next episode.